I'm actually kind of playing kind of like tight and small, but that's how I got. Because you're actually getting an insane amount of rhythm from...
This episode is being supported by Tapeit. If you currently use voice notes to record your ideas, you should try Tapeit instead.
Yeah, like if you look at how drawn out the sax is, that's really fun for me, especially when it comes to delays. So like, for example, if I'm here.
You only call me after midnight. I pull up on your lawn.
So I just like really just feel it and play it like an instrument, and then you have these moments that... So that's what I just drew right now, which honestly is pretty cool. Out. So much time is spent like, you know, like, I'd say a big part of, like, I guess what I'm trying to get across here is like, work on this big, expensive, in terms of how much time you spend, you know, section of vocoders and whatnot, and then put it all in a bus, throw it around. And then just debase the fuck out of it until it just exists in some interesting little supportive role.
Yeah.
And another trick I love is to literally fuck with the master. So as you can see, there's a chorus that comes on top of the master. I'll do an exaggerated version, but there's another place I draw. So like, if I want to completely take a section into a new zone, sometimes I don't like to get into the minutiae of the tracks and just do it all in the master. So like, this is not what I did or would do with the song, but let's say I want this to live in a totally different place. I put an echo on the entire master, and then I just draw it. So watch this. I want to go to the bridge, and I want it to feel totally different. Absurdist example, but it's obviously like the most extreme example, but it's a really nice way to completely leave sections. I also love to put a tremolo on the master. This is really fun what it can do, because it can give, if you want a section to really like move, so let's say I want this to pulse in 16ths. It's very stereo nice, so I do that a lot. On this song, it was a chorus in the bridge.
If you, like so many of our guests, use voice notes to capture your ideas, you will love Tapeit. It's the iPhone recording app designed specifically for musicians and songwriters. With Tapeit, you can record straight from your lock screen, set markers, add notes, and even include photos of settings. Plus, there's cloud sync, you can import your old voice notes, and to stay on top of it all, Tapeit has great labeling features like automatic instrument detection. And all of the above is free. If you currently use voice notes, switching to Tapeit is a no-brainer. And there's more. If you upgrade to Tapeit Pro, it uses 2 microphones on your iPhone along with gentler dynamic compression to give a much more natural sound than any of the usual apps. And we have a huge offer for you. 50% off Tapeit Pro if you upgrade now. Just go to the app and use the promo code TAKENOTES or click the link in the description below.
Any artists that were recording in the dawn of stereo did some of the most exciting panning. I believe in super, super hard panning. So like if I go through this session, you know, for example, like my string player, all the way right, completely dry. His other take, completely dry left. So if I'm truly sending signals with no reverbs or anything, completely hard right and left, I mean, that is so wide. And then these acoustics, I have one in the middle, 178, 195, 2 super wide, no verbs. So these things, I don't want to necessarily have. I would say the easy way of achieving wideness is having these sort of sprinkly moments go all over the place. But sometimes it's nice to get really insane with it. Like, low end is something that is rarely panned because it's really hard to pan. But in a song like this, I have one bass, mostly left, another bass, mostly right. So, for example, typically, I'd take the bass and I put it in the center, and I'd have these bits panned, right? That sounds a little bit more normal.
Yeah.
That's a little nauseating, but if I bring another one in, now I'm really wide. So the best way to answer that question is pan instruments that people tell you or you're not supposed to pan. What do you pan? Okay, you pan your overheads, right? There's stereo pair, you pan sometimes vocals, you pan things like 2 strings, but Beatles pan the entire fucking drum kit.
Yeah.
Beatles pan the entire fucking vocal. You take out one headphone and you're like, well, I can't even sing anymore. Nothing wrong with that. That's a really great technique, and I think panning died in the explosion of radio and in the explosion of like these like really high intense, like high fidelity stereo headphones and things like that. Everyone all of a sudden started, or maybe it was a reaction to the 70s, 60s and 70s that maybe it's new consoles that were made. Maybe it got into over panning where everything got so wide that it became sort of zero. But I don't like to pan with effects because then it's like the idea of panning. So for example, if you have if I'm playing something and then I have my reverb or my delay making it wide, part of me is like, well, I'd rather just like play it 3 times and put it here, here, and here, which is pretty much what's going on with those strings. So it's never, it's easy enough to be like, oh, make that big, put a choir on it. Might sound small. There's only so much sonic space, right? And so you can't go beyond the line, even though a lot of people would like you to believe you can. Like, think about how goofy surround is when we literally have 2 ears, right? Like, it's cool if you're in a giant room, but, if you're lucky and you have 2 ears that hear, then you exist in stereo. And at this point in time, we can hear in stereo and we can hear frequencies through like our eyes and our body, right? Like, and a lot of low end or whatnot. So I think so much about that field, and sometimes or often to achieve something, it's not the obvious route. Because in the sonic field, more, which is something we fight with in compression, often equals less. Because if you hit the wall, if you took 100 marbles in a circle, and then you took all the marbles and you pushed them against one wall, they wouldn't all be able to touch the wall, And so you can't have 100 marbles in every zone on the left and the right and the back and the front. And so it's kind of like placing these things in different spots to actually make something sound big. That is a huge thought when it comes to drums and low end specifically, because the louder you play the drum, especially if it's a live drum, often the more you back yourself into the corner with how loud it can sound on the record. That's why I like to play so quiet. Like even at the very end when the shit totally blows up, this is a drum take that for some reason I played. It's not very hard. I'm actually kind of playing kind of like tight and small, but that's how I got. Because you're actually getting an insane amount of rhythm from... That's what I'm really beating the shit out of, is the acoustics, and at that point in the song, I'm beating the living shit out of the bass. And so it's always a bit of a weird backwards journey of how I want to make something feel big rather than actually being big.
Yeah. It's interesting, the whole way that you've explained that and created that.
Yeah, my marbles theory.